We on the show this morning, a very interesting look at the stories that have been making rounds or maybe landfall since the start of the week up until now. And this week's edition, well, it's going to take us into a very interesting, ever-entertaining turn of events when it comes to everything that's been happening since the past 1 week. And for starters, let's take our focus now to our very first big story that we might be taking a look at. And it's all about the minimum wage saga. What's been happening with the labor unions and the TUC and the Nigerian government. Well, apparently, we went on strike for just 1 day. And in just that 1 day, we got a response from the presidency. And many people would want to ask exactly how come? How did we achieve that? Well, it's easy and very simple. Well, the Parliamentary Staff Association of Nigeria decided to jump in on the strike action, and they cut out the power supply, or rather the water supply, to the National Assembly. Well, my dear friends, I guess that's the one way you can get the attention of the presidency, because there's a certain relationship between not being able to flush your toilets and, of course, getting things done in Nigeria. Well, it's great. We actually thank goodness that the attention of the presidency has been drawn using this means to the situation, and he has asked the financial institutions in Nigeria to actually take on this and make sure that we get a minimum wage. Now, coming up on the show still, we're going to get a look at Kaduna State and what's happening with the previous governor, El-Rufai. Well, apparently in Nigeria, you are not guilty until you leave office. And in this case, that is exactly what we're seeing. Allegations have been coming in regarding his tenure as governor. And of course, we see that we have a situation here where it's been discovered the little misappropriation of funds here and there that have been going on or that went on during his own tenure. We'll get to talk about that and much more only if you stick with us here on Breakfast Extra. Of course, I'm not alone. Joining me would be my, the only co-host I have, Judith Atibi. How you doing, Judith?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you doing, Mazino?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. It's going to be a very interesting morning as we're going to be looking at 62,000 naira versus 60,000 naira versus 250,000 naira. And I hope that you're ready for this one because the up and down.
Yo, well, Mazino, there's one person you are supposed to be putting into that you should be thinking about, and all of our prayers should go to. Do you know who that is?
No, do tell me, please.
Oh, the Secretary General of the Federation. He cannot pin to pay his drivers 100,000 naira.
Well, hey, what can I say? He's having problems paying his drivers. We're having problems feeding. The imbalance there, yes. Well, in any case, thank you very much for waking up bright and early to you out there. And of course, thank you very much, Judith, for joining in. Let's get the show on the road. Thank you for joining us here. This is the start for Breakfast Extra. We'll be back with the dailies.
And thank you once again for joining us on a Saturday edition of Breakfast Extra. And on today's show, we'll look into matters arising from Labour Union's engagement with the federal government on reaching a new minimum wage. A quick touch as well on our reports during the week regarding the Emirate tussle in Kano State and also concerns from customers of the now defunct Heritage Bank. So there's so much more on the show today. So these and much more we're going to be touching inside of the show today. Mazino,
hey,
how are you feeling?
I don't know how to feel this week because it's a mix of emotions because of the events that have happened from the past 1 week.
Look,
seeing the presidency step in when it comes to the matter of minimum wage, it's kind of like a relief. But
is it?
It is a relief. I'll tell you something. There's so much to consider, especially with the Governors Forum stepping out now and telling that we are walking down a slippery slope when it comes to the 60,000 naira demand for, or rather, proposal by the government.
Right.
And even that proposal might not be sustainable, and that's the problem. But we get to talk about it.
Well, we'll talk about that in due time. Well, anyway, let's get started, shall we? And we kick off Saturday's edition, however, with the front pages of the dailies this morning. We're going to be giving you all the front pages from very major dailies here in Nigeria and also across Africa as well. And of course, we're going to get started with our first dailies for today. Let me quickly grab mine. There we go. It's going to be The Guardian. We're getting started with The Guardian newspaper. And what you see there, the very first headline that jumps at you is, "We can't pay 60,000 naira minimum wage, governors declare." And that's on page 2. At the bottom there, you see, all things considered, the NGF holds that the 60,000 naira minimum wage proposal is not sustainable and cannot fly. It will simply mean that many states will spend all their FAC allocations on just paying salaries with nothing left for development purposes. In fact, a few states will end up borrowing to pay workers every month. We do not think this will be the collective interest of the country, including workers. You can find that story and so much more on page 2. At the bottom there, federal government committed to ending illegal bunkering, pipeline vandalism, and piracy. And you can find that story from the minister there. You can find that story on page 3. At the bottom there, tariff increase, multi-choice to pay 150 million naira fine for disobeying court order. And that's on page 3 as well. At the bottom, rights violations, NHRC to interrogate impact of Tinubu's reforms on rising instances, and that is on page 3 as well. And also at the bottom, NCC endorses short codes for promoting cultural content. You can find the story on page 3 too. At the top there, Tinubu commissions vice president's official residency abandoned for 14 years. Now, Mazzino, do you know how much this residency costs?
No, how much is it?
Ooh, it's in the billions. It's like 1.1 billion naira, if I remember. And it's almost the same as an internally generated revenue for a state. It's wild. Anyway, at the very top there for their women's Guardian Women feature, you can find the story, striking a balance between work and personal life in crucial for long-term success, well-being, and that's from Roberta Oyedekun. Don't know what that, but you can find that story. And also for their spotlight, Ajao Lautek's golden boy shares inspiring journey of humble beginning. He's the best graduating student, by the way, and he's now 10 million naira richer.
I want to go back to school.
I know, me too.
I think I can do it all over again.
My brain is sharper now.
Very true. Moving on now, let's move on to the Punch newspaper. We've got these headlines for the Punch this morning. For Saturday, farmers predict worsening food crisis, blame fuel subsidy removal and insecurity. The two biggest things on the government's table this season. Ask consumers to brace for more price hikes. Oh, wow. And warn government against food importation. FG unveils revised national policy on food safety, promises food abundance. Inside of our strips this morning, if you do join us in the second hour, we'll be taking a look at one of the editorial cartoons that actually features something about this. Brace yourselves, because the food insecurity is about to get real big. At the top for the Saturday Punch newspaper, minimum wage, FG proposes 62,000 naira. Government wants 57,000 naira. At the bottom there, policemen abandon stop and search duties, turn roundabouts into collection centers. Ha! Oh boy, it's about time that we had focus on the roundabouts in Lagos, especially with the activities of law enforcement at them. Sometimes there's something called an agent provocateur, where they actually let you go ahead and break the law, and then they come to you and say you've just broken the law. Yeah. It happens all the time, especially around the airport area, Apple Junction, Festac, and plenty more places in Lagos. We'll talk about that sometime soon. Yes. Celine Afiba, families fear foul play in Aba hookup saga. And also, let's see why I stopped tithe offering payment in my church, Pastor. I'm with you on that one. FG spends 697 billion naira on revenue collection in 11 months, say a report, all inside of the Saturday Punch newspaper. Oh, yes, indeed. Now let's move on to Saturday Independent, shall we? There we are. The very first one that jumps right at you, rising cost of medication. We are dying. Nigerians groan. At the bottom there, give indigenous health research development priority. And that's from Professor Emeje. Set up intervention development fund in health sector. Dr. Enebulele tells FG. Integrate indigenous medical practice into conventional system. And that's from Dr. Issa. You can find that feature story there on page 8. Honor bestowed on Soyinka timely, says Afenifere, urges government to inject his humanism philosophy into governance, and that's on page 4. Tribunal at the bottom there, when you move away from that, the headline at the bottom there is Tribunal finds multi-choice 150 million naira over hike in subscription rate. We disagree with CCPT ruling, says multi-choice. And that's on page 7. Also, when you move away from that at the bottom, governors reject 60,000 naira minimum wage, insist it's not sustainable. We're disappointed in you for likening our strike to treasonable felony, Labour replies SGF. And that story is on page 3. I'm an African rebel. That's Yemi Alade there, feature on her, Nigerian superstar.
You can find that story on page 9. And at the bottom, Femi Jimoh's allegations false, mischievous crew, MFM, that's on page 29. At the top there, despite NIWA's, and is it NIWA or NIWA's 10.9 billion naira budget, no fewer than 17 people die on waterways every month. And that's a report that I can find on page 23. EU-UNDP amplify fight against sexual gender-based violence through deafening silence. And that's on page 11. You can find all the stories and more on Saturday Independence. Very interesting stories, I would say. I would say go pick it up right about now.
Yes, there's plenty of talk about the hike in subscription fee for DSTV and the fine that's been imposed them. Along with that, they get to give I think almost every customer free 1 month subscription they've been ordered to do. But they're going through trying times themselves. In fact, the company itself might be sold very soon to a foreign company. So we'll wait and see what happens inside the news when it comes to the DSTV issue. Saturday Times is up next, and we have this big headline here. Why Northerners slammed production of film Amina say okay Ogun Nijiofo. And minimum wage crisis ahead as governors shoot down 60,000 naira amount not sustainable with our monthly allocations. It's the big deal this morning. Gunmen unleash terror in Niger communities, kill 30 in daytime attack. 10 youths who refused to join them were beheaded, Senator weeps. I'm not ashamed of sex on first date, says Moed Baby. And Emirship tussle, court reserves judgment in suit filed by 15th Emir of Kano. Electricity agency officials in trouble over alleged 1.85 billion naira fraud. At the very top, improvement on border security remains our priority, says the federal government. And accept your aging. Don't be deceived by praises. D1 warns Genevieve. Oh, come on. Genevieve is still so beautiful, isn't she? I think she's
she's my kryptonite.
Genevieve.
Yeah, I don't know how to call her that.
That's beautiful.
She's so beautiful.
That's beautiful. What else do we have for today?
Let's move on now to Africa, shall we? And this time we're going all the way to Sowetan. There we go. Oh no, better yet, Saturday morning. Or Saturday Nation, I'm sorry, forgive me. Sowetan, there we are, much better. And let's focus on South Africa. Of course, all through last week and this week, it's been South Africa dominating the international news when it comes to the African continent.
Videos,
all thanks to
spaces.
the elections, I know. And so the very first one is Catch 22, stratting old foes or distant siblings, how the ANC's choices will trip on its most sacred policies. You can find that story on page 3. And there's a chat there that you can see Sowetan live, and you can see all of the 4 front runners from Zuma to the DA leadership, DA's presidential candidate to Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as Julius Malema as well. And at the other side there, there's B, constitutionalism, NHI, minimum wage, support Palestine, land exploration, as well as free education, and all of what they all support. Yes, yes, no, no. It's very interesting there. If you grab it, you can see it. And that when you move away from that now to the other sidebar there, and the move and the no on the move, and then at the bottom there, call for comments, bill to handle municipal coalitions, and that's on page 5. Music is my life, Bucci. Oh, I love her. That's on page 6. And then discovery, ensure cyber attack panic, and that story is on page 9. And that's from Sowetan there. Well, it's very interesting to see that, what's his name? The presidential candidate for the DA doesn't support free education.
Very interesting. I find it very weird.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll touch on that one inside of Focus Africa. We get to ask our correspondent from inside of South Africa. Moving on now to the Guardian Post for Cameroon. Cameroon on global stage again. Yang voted UN General Assembly President. Congratulations to him. World Environment Day. Orange Cameroon engages in plastic waste collection in Douala. And Personality of the Week, Dr. Besong Ogok Ntui, Sowedak General Manager. At the bottom, at National Finance Committee meeting, NIM MINFI boss says Cameroon on path to boost digital innovation and job opportunities at Koika Cameroon office. And it's plenty inside of the African stage, but we get to look at that later on inside of our show here for Breakfast Extra. Thank you very much for joining us, and that's it for the dailies. Coming up inside this hour, Nigerian government, well, they lament that the 60,000 naira proposal by the government might not be sustainable. Only if you stay tuned, you get to see. And of course, we're going to be talking and taking our very first big story, which is on that subject itself, the new national wage model. Do stay tuned. We'll be back with our very first big story for this morning. It's Breakfast Extra, and you're welcome back. Now, on Tuesday, a few hours after organized labor in Nigeria suspended the two-day strike, President Bola Tinubu directed the Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, to present the cost implication for a new minimum wage within 2 days. President Tinubu gave the order at a meeting with the government negotiation team led by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, at the Presidential Villa in Abuja, the nation's capital. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, disclosed this in an interview with pressmen after the closed-door meeting on Tuesday.
Now, fast forward to Thursday, Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, along with the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Ugudu, presented President Tinubu with the cost implications of the new minimum wage in his office at the Presidential Villa in Abuja on Thursday. Now, recall that organized labor comprising the Nigerian Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress had embarked on a nationwide strike on Monday to demand an increased minimum wage for workers and the reversal of the recently increased electricity tariffs. However, the labor union leadership suspended the strike on Tuesday for 5 days after signing a commitment with the federal government to resume negotiations and come up with the new minimum wage within a week.
Now, the submission of the cost implications for a new minimum wage, however, triggered speculations that the finance minister proposed 105,000 naira in the new minimum wage template. On Thursday, the special advisor to the president on information and strategy, Bayo Onanuga, punctured this claim in a post on his X account. He wrote, "The Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, has not proposed 105,000 naira minimum wage. The contrary story being disseminated is false." Now, meanwhile, the meeting of the tripartite committee on national minimum wage was again adjourned till Friday, that's yesterday, due to the unavailability of the cost template. Now,
on Friday, the Nigeria Governors Forum, NGF, warned that implementing the proposed 60,000 naira monthly minimum wage would push back many states into financial ruin, crippling their ability to fund critical development projects and even basic services. Now, the governors stated this in a statement by the Acting Director, Media and Public Affairs of the Nigeria Governors Forum, Ajiya Halima Saliu Ahmed. Now, saying governors across the country sympathize with labor unions pushing for higher wages. However, she cautioned that the 60,000 naira figure is simply unsustainable given the financial realities facing most states. And so joining us to discuss Nigeria's anticipation of an agreed figure for the national minimum wage is Emeka Obigolu. He is the senior advocate of Nigeria and president Abuja Chambers of Commerce and Industry. A very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, and thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Now, on Tuesday, President Bola Tinubu directed the Minister of Finance, from our intro, and Wale Edun, who's the Minister of Finance, by the way, to present the cost implication for a new minimum wage within 2 days. Could there be implications in terms of omissions or oversight to the meeting, that was within the period? It was a 48-hour deadline. Could there have been something that was missed within that time frame?
Well, because we're discussing a national minimum wage, it's expected that there should be decision makers in the room. The president has shown good faith by requesting for cost implication. And recall that I said on Tuesday that every obligation of government must be benchmarked with sustainability in the index. Now, government cannot borrow to pay minimum wage. But for me, what the president has done is to seek input from the technocrats to know what the government can pay. What is the cost implication? Now, we learned that the cost implication has been submitted to the president. But the challenge now is that the decision makers were not in the room when Labour was promised minimum of 60,000 naira. And you now see the state governors coming out to say that, look, hey, we cannot even pay 60,000 naira. And that is a challenge, because if you are prescribing a national minimum wage, it means the states and the local governments and even the private sector will be bound by the national minimum wage. In an ideal scenario, when the national minimum wage is prescribed and made a law, the states can also on their own benchmark the minimum wage. States like Lagos is not expected to pay what states like Sokoto or Enugu is paying. The cost of living in states differ and they vary. So what the national minimum wage should prescribe is the lowest benchmark for payment of minimum wage. Now, the state governments are saying that even at that, even what the president has, as it were, promised, that we cannot even pay it. So this presents a different challenge. And that is why in negotiation, it's always good to have all the decision makers in the room when promises are made. How they will walk through this is now a bigger problem. But I think, like I said on Tuesday, that everybody negotiating, whether for labor or for government, shouldn't in this country negotiate in good faith. The labor knows what states can pay. They are the bureaucracy of the states. Governments say that we cannot pay 60,000 naira minimum wage. I think the labor should dig up data from the states where they are the bureaucrats to show what each state can pay. So,
all right, so Mr. Emeka, we hear you on that one, and that's very true. I mean, Labour also has to bring up data as well. But then again, during the discussions, presenting this to the president was the Finance Minister, Wale Edun, and also the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Atiku Bagudu. I mean, these are essential ministries or ministers that ought to have the responsibility in making these decisions. Wouldn't you say that that suffices for, well, the policymakers being in the room like you spoke of earlier?
When you're practicing federalism, it appears to me that each state is independent within the federal structure. What Anambra State can pay as minimum wage should depend on the number of civil servants working in Anambra State and the income generated by the state. If you add that to the federal allocation, you can now begin to identify what Anambra can pay. So it appears to me that the federal government may not be able to appreciate what Anambra or Ekiti State or Sokoto State will be able to pay as minimum wage. Now, when you have a federal structure as we have, and you're discussing national minimum wage, it's important that the state governors and even the be represented in the room so that what decision is taken can bind them. You cannot bind a man who is not in the room where the decision is taken. So now this challenge has come. Labour and of course federal government must bring in the state governments or the state governors. And in my view, the local governments represented by whatever structure they have to sit down and negotiate for a fair wage for workers. You see, until good faith is implemented, we can continue going round, but they will never come up with a solution that addresses this issue. It's an existential threat for workers. And I appeal to everybody who is involved in this to quit gerrymandering. Let us address this core issue head on and get away with this phase. There are other issues confronting the government. As it were now, we have been distracted by labor dispute, which is avoidable. So the way to go is to bring in all the decision makers and deal with this once and for all.
Now, many states, which is, of course, the Nigerian Governors Forum, they've all lamented that a 60,000 naira minimum wage will mean financial ruin for the states. And the statement was made by the Publicity Secretary for the forum. What do you make of this move? Do you think that it will indeed plunge many of the states in ruin? And why was this not even considered during the negotiations, or when, Wale Edu and the secretary as well was, submitting their blueprint or their template for a new minimum wage?
Well, my understanding of states in Nigeria, a lot of state governments are running an opaque system. Within the state, nobody knows what comes in and how it is spent. So these are issues of hard facts. What is your allocation? What is your staff strength? What is the bureaucracy in your state? How does it work? Recall that when we came to 30,000, a lot of states also lamented that they are unable to pay 30,000 naira minimum wage. Yet, when it was made a law, they all paid it. Now we have come again. Somewhere down the line, the revenue generation from FAC has tripled within the May 29th of last year to this current May 29th. Their revenue has tripled. How can they say that they cannot pay 60,000 naira minimum wage? It baffles me. But again, it is not for me to speculate. These are issues that will be based on facts and figures. Let them come to labor. Luckily, labor works. Labor is the bureaucracy of these states. It's for labor to challenge each state that says I cannot pay. Bring out data, bring out facts to show that the state can pay. And I think if Labor Department of Research is still working, this is time for them to show that they know what they're asking for.
So, Mr. Emeka, we hear plenty from the federal government, the presidency in this case, and we also hear plenty from Labour, who are at the moment proposing 250,000 and above for minimum wage. But there seems to be very little representation of the private sector. No one is hearing whether they're good with the 60,000 naira or whether they aren't. What do you make of this instance here regarding the private sector and their silence on this matter?
Well, the private sector, of course, will work with any agreement that the government reaches. As a private sector operator, in my business, we pay above the minimum wage. I don't think any private sector, particularly in the big cities, will have any challenge paying the minimum wage. But then again, that is why we talk about city-based or state-based minimum wage. Even within the state, even within a state, like in my state, Anambra, what you pay in Onitsha may be unaffordable for some communities in my state. So labor negotiation, when you get to the federal or national minimum wage, if you get to the states, you benchmark from there and begin to reflect the realities on ground in different states. The economic power is not nationally stable. It's not equitably spread across our geographic space. So it's going to also involve a lot of negotiation within the states to find what works for everybody. But as a private sector operative, I believe that whatever government agrees is the national minimum wage, the private sector will be obligated to implement it.
Now, you just said something which is very important, almost pertinent there about, that means the governors have to now come to the table in terms of negotiations. And so now if we're looking at a new minimum wage, which would be a unified number, what would you propose that should be that will be standardized across, all 36 states, plus the FCT and the private sector as well?
Well, remember on Tuesday, I prescribed anything between 100,000 and 150,000. I still believe that in terms of a living wage, that can address not all the issues a family will face in a month, in 30 days, but at least reflects the challenges and the rising inflation and the cost of living in Nigeria today. Whether government can afford it is a different thing. But I think minimum wage shouldn't be below 100,000 naira.
Okay, now to that end, if you propose somewhere between 100 and 150,000 naira, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's inflation. This will still have an effect on inflation whether we like it or not. What do you propose that the government, maybe policies or something else, that the government embark upon to help make sure that inflation doesn't become the next thing we're talking about, or we're already talking about it in any case, but so it doesn't get any higher?
Well, on inflation, you will find that it's a vicious cycle. Over the years, we've seen clearly that until we have a stable value of our currency, we cannot arrest inflation. Why do I say this? If we must peg naira at some point, floating your national currency when you do not export anything but oil is not going to help Nigeria. We have floated the national currency since May 29th last year, and national currency crumbled. At some point, the government had to come back to at least try to induce the market by selling dollar at controlled market price. Now, it appears that there's some form of stability. But even at that, we do not know how this will last. And that is why, because we're an import-dependent country, everything we utilize in this country basically imported. Importers are hedging their bets on expensive dollar. So when they come in, for every import we bring in, custom is charging dollar at black market rate for import duty. Everybody is dollar dependent. So in a dollar dependent economy, it is really difficult to control inflation until you have a stable exchange rate. We are not producing anything. And government has also not done enough to support the productive sector of the economy. Just yesterday, in my congratulatory message to the Minister of FCT for the wonderful work he's been doing with regards to infrastructure, I called his attention to the Idu Industrial District in the Federal Capital Territory, which is supposed to be the industrial base of the FCT. But if you go to Idu Industrial District, there are no roads. Power is almost non-existent. Water is a mirage. How can an economy such as ours not support industrialization? So if you come to FCT, you have the fine streets in the city center, street lights, everything working. But the base, the industrial base of the city is neglected. And you want to control inflation. So apart from dealing with the value of our currency, we must take deliberate efforts and deliberate steps to support industrialization. We have been mouthing a lot of issues. We have to support this, but we are not showing it on ground. I use Idu Industrial District as an example. And what do you do there? People now do land speculation with industrial plots of land.
Now, towing the same line of, apologies to cut you there, but towing the same line of supporting industrialization of our economy, one of the things that the organized labor unions embarked on was to demand for a decrease or reversal of the recently increased, electricity tariffs. And many have argued that, many critics and analysts have argued that the overtaxation doubled with fuel subsidy removal, which in turn meant increase in price of fuel, as well as, not to forget, the overtaxation that we're seeing in these sectors. Do you think that, the government should start to factor the reversal of, electricity tariff in? Because when you think about it, it sort of impacts industrialization, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It does. But you see, most industries in Nigeria do not even depend on the national grid again because it's non-existent. So when you talk about electricity tariff, if you go to most industrial districts, you find that they are generating their own power. So they don't even have a feel of the national grid. Definitely, a lot of policies of this present administration has eaten deep into the purchasing power of Nigerians. Whether we should reverse the electricity tariff increase or leave it as it is a question for the technocrats to decide. For me, there must be ways for government to support the businesses in Nigeria. Electricity tariff has been justified by governments by claims that it will attract investment into the electricity sector. Fine. We await the investment, we have not seen it. Meanwhile, people are paying beyond their means to have light. And what it does for us now is that those who can afford it are moving their properties off grid. They are using alternative means to generate power for their properties. And very soon you find that even in the band A, which was promised 20 hours of light a day, they don't have 6-7 hours in most cities. And for those of us in Abuja who may enjoy some good power supply, if you go to Enugu, if you go to other states, you find that band A don't get 6 hours of power a day. You go to most states in Nigeria, they don't have it. So what is the justification for bifurcating your customers into band A and band B when there is nothing different apart from the power to pay, as you assume it? Because the fact that I live in Asokoro or Maitama may not necessarily translate into my ability to pay what band A customer could pay. I may be staying in my official residence. So all these are speculators, speculation that has not worked. We have not seen increased power supply.
All right.
We have not seen efficiency in the electricity industry, and we are where we are.
Mr. Emeka, thank you so much for doing this with us. We appreciate you for coming on and just discussing this very crucial matter as it pertains every Nigerian and our nation at large.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And welcome back. A federal high court sitting in Kano has fixed June the 13th for ruling on the dispute surrounding the Kano State Emirate saga. The court, presided by Justice Abdullahi Mohammed, was supposed to, on Thursday, rule on the issue of jurisdiction, but adjourned the sitting to June the 30th following a heated argument between both counsels. Now, some of the respondents, Aminu Baba, Dan Agudun, Dawanki Baba, all of the Kano Emirate, had approached the court asking that it restrain the state government and its agencies, including security agencies, from enforcing, implementing, and operationalization the repealed law.
We had our News Central correspondent in Kano, Emmanuel Bagudu, who will be joining us in a bit. And he, captured exactly what had happened inside of the courts. We'll be talking to Mr. Emmanuel Bagudu in a minute. But first off, we also have joining us Mr. Johnson Omede, Managing Partner, Vasanta Advocates and Legal Consultants. Mr. Johnson, you are welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you for doing this with us. Let's get started, shall we? How do you think the outcome of this ruling could, the ruling so far, we understand that they've been called to the CJN had called both parties concerning the conflicting order. But how do you think that the outcome of the ruling could impact the overall situation in the Kano Emirate and the relationship between the state government and the Emirate?
Thank you very much. It's fundamental that we understand the law is not a respecter of anyone. And what the justices of the courts are called to do is to apply the law, irrespective of who is behind the scene. And so whatever the outcome of the judgment will be, parties expectedly are to obey and comply. And so we're not looking forward to any disparity of relationship. We're not looking forward to any breakdown of law and order. What we expect all parties regarding this issue, irrespective of what the decision of the court will be, is that ultimately when the court's decision comes out, all parties must comply because the court is not a respecter of man. So that's it.
Okay, so Mr. Johnson, we also want to find out what the possible implications for Kano State government and its agencies could be, as well as for the Kano Emirates, depending on the court's ruling. What could they be looking forward to?
Okay, because this matter is sub judice, we are careful not to preempt the court. But let me state quickly that what has transpired over the period has to do with an activity that borders on the exercise of the legislative powers of the House of Assembly of Kano State. The House of Assembly came up with a repeal bill that actually repeals some laws that has to do with the emirate. And those laws were the laws that actually led to the deposition of the 14th Emir of Kano and the installation of the 15th Emir of Kano. And then the same legislative power was exercised in 2024 to remove the 15th Emir of Kano and install the 14th Emir, now the 16th Emir of Kano. Now, these are legislative powers and exercise that has been carried out. And this power is bestowed upon the House of Assembly by the Constitution. And the same law haven't been made assented to by the governor, become the extant law that applies to activities as it relates to deposition, appointment, installation, and the continual exercise of the power of the emirate. And so, being the extant law, it is the law that speaks on the issue of the emirate at this time. Now, the case before the court, understandably, is the issue that relates to some injunctions that were obtained, particularly with reference to the injunction obtained from the court presided over by Honorable Justice Liman. Justice Liman gave an order to stop the Kano State House of Assembly or from taking the law to the governor for ascension. That was done after the governor had assented to that law and it became extant. So the question that people now ask, or lawyers like us we ask, is that can an injunction stop an act that is completed? And from decided cases all the way from the Supreme Court till now, no injunction of court can stop cases or activities or actions that are already completed. And as such, given that injunction by way of ex parte application, the justice of the court may not have, at the point in time, be abreast with the situation of what transpired prior to the time the case came to the court. Again, being a chieftaincy issue, one will want to ask, is the Federal High Court of Nigeria a court of law that could determine, answer, or profile solution to the questions brought before it on issues of chieftaincy? These are the angles, and these are the issues that the court has been addressed upon, and the ruling is.
Mr. Johnson, I think you just hit all the buttons there when you talked especially about the timing of these court orders, when they were given and how they were supposed to be followed through with. And that's one thing that most people aren't absolutely clear of. However, let's go back to the beginning, the genesis of this, when the 14th Emir was deposed himself, and this was by the former governor Ganduje. Now, we had these issues, but they were not as the furor about it was not as what we see currently. Why was it so easy back then to just simply rule on a legislation to get the 14th Emir out? But right now, trying to depose the 15th is becoming a problem. What's the discrepancy here?
Okay, so the discrepancy, there is no discrepancy. You know, for every activities that relates to issues that are contentious, there are actors. Some actors can be considered as responsible actors who are willing to obey an action that is considered as an executive action backed by legislative activity and who move on from there without having to challenge any of those procedures. Now, what we have in 2020, when the 14th emir was deposed, was also the same procedure that was actually elected by the sitting governor, Abdullahi Ganduje, who, under the legislative power exercised by the House of Assembly, deposed the 14th emir and then banished him to a kingdom known as Awe. The 14th emir, in obedience to the law, left quietly and went to the very location he was banished until an order of court actually vacated or quashed that procedure of banishing him completely from the territory of Kano. And then when he returned from the kingdom where he was banished, he moved straight to Lagos and then resided there until the current activity. There was no issue. Now what we have as of today is that there is a legislative activity that has taken place empowering the governor to remove and reappoint. And he has exercised his power as bestowed upon him by the laws made by the House of Assembly. And what was expected, I must say, is that the actors behind those activities were actually supposed to obey all the legislative activities and the executive actions that followed without contention.
Now,
should there be no contention?
Mr. Johnson, I hate to cut you, but I've just been informed that our correspondent, Emmanuel Bagudu, who was live and has been covering this story, is joining us now. Emmanuel Bagudu is News Central's correspondent, and we understand is joining us from Abuja. Emmanuel, if you can hear me, good morning to you.
A very good morning.
Thank you so much for coming on. Please give us an update on what you witnessed so far at the proceedings on Thursday, at the courts on Thursday.
Yes, it was all a feeling of anxiety. You remember that very Thursday, everyone was expected that a ruling would take place, but it never did because there was a heated argument, as we reported, because in fact, a lot of respondents have been included in the suit. The Aminu Baba, who actually made the petition, who is the applicant, has a total of up to 5 to 6 respondents. The respondents are the Kano State government. In fact, he included the DSS and the police, who are the respondents. Quite surprising because the police have actually been obeying the court order. If you remember very well, when the two federal high court injunctions were made that actually said that status quo should be maintained, we saw the police, going to protect Aminu Ado Bayero. So the respondents were many, so the argument was very heated. That was why judgment didn't take place that day. So judgment has been, ruling has been fixed for 13th of June. So there is a feeling of anxiety. And to make it clear, once on Thursday, which is 13th June, we have a ruling, then we will know who the emir is. Because the issue of jurisdiction now states that if the Federal High Court says that it has jurisdiction, it simply means that that initial judgment, ruling the Federal High Court made that status quo should be maintained, simply means that Adewere remains the area. So that's what the anxiety is all about, because the supporters of Ado Bayero and that of Sanusi are just anxious to see this happens. Because if at the end of the day jurisdiction is confirmed that the Federal High Court has a jurisdiction over the case, which means the case will continue to be heard, and then Ado Bayero remains the emir until the case is determined by the court. So that is the feeling of anxiety all over. And we hope that by Thursday, everything will be calm. If you remember very well, there was tight security, heavy security surveillances on that day because of the anxiety coming from the supporters of the two emirs. So that is
Well, Emmanuel, want to say thank you very much for joining us. It's already time for us to go into our news, but let's thank the gentlemen who have joined us. Emmanuel, thank you very much. And of course, Mr. Johnson, thank you for also taking out time from your Saturday schedule to be with us to explain the instance here, talking about the emirate tussle in Kano State. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, do stay tuned, because coming up, we have the news. And of course, Dashin is on standby to take us through it. Dashin, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you doing, Mazino?
We are fine, and we can't wait to hear exactly what's happened so far this weekend inside the news. So please do bring it to us.
Definitely, Mazino. All right, so let's head straight to the breakfast headlines. And we'll begin with by telling you that no fewer than 20 people have been killed by suspected terrorists when they invaded the Bassa community in Shiroro local government area of Niger State. Terrorists, who were numbered over 50, were heavily armed with sophisticated weapons and operated freely during the attack, which occurred between 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. local time. It was learned that after beheading the victims, the gunmen asked the members of those killed to carry the headless bodies while they took videos and pictures of them. The terrorists had selected 20 adults and tried to recruit the 10 young men who refused, which resulted to their deaths, while the other 10 were shot at close range. Residents of the community believe that they were invaded by Boko Haram insurgents and not just terrorists. All right, let's move to the next story, where Nigeria's National Human Rights Commission says that over 50,000 complaints of human rights violations were recorded across the 36 states of the country, including the Federal Capital Territory, in the month of May. This was made known in the nation's capital, Abuja, during the presentation of its monthly human rights violation dashboard on complaints reported to the commission. Idong Joseph filed this report.
The presentation of the 2024 Human Rights Situation Dashboard represents the 5th edition of complaints received, including unreported cases of rights violation monitored across the country. According to the National Human Rights Commission, while the report for the first 4 months of the year witnessed about 23,000 cases of rights violation, there was an upsurge as the figure doubled in May.
This month's edition features 55,218 complaints received by the Commission, with violations against state actors topping the chart. The violations recorded in the month of May impacted on an estimated 157,368 persons across the country.
Complaints against state actors rose to an astronomical 31,000. One state alone accounted for almost 80% of this, and that is Bauchi, where the Nigerian police did mass arrests.
The arrest and prolonged detention of journalists and the killings of law enforcement officers were visibly mentioned in the report for the month of May. The National Human Rights Commission adds that increased violence against children also witnessed a spike in the same months. The Commission adds that recorded cases of domestic violence was high in the northeast and the north-central regions of the country.
Rape and defilement of minors. In fact, there is a state in Nigeria that in May alone we recorded 12.
While the report largely accused state actors of rights violations, it also condemned the killings and abductions which were recorded.
The police and the armed forces accounted for 40,138. It should also worry you that 7,600 parents were actually reported as violating the rights of their children.
Our Human Rights Observatory recorded 298 killings and 360 abductions, largely attributed to terrorists and bandit groups.
The report sheds more light on the state of human rights violations in Nigeria, hoping that government will rise to the occasion and address them.
Thank you, Idong Joseph. Now let's move on, where ram sellers in Lagos have decried the low patronage they are experiencing ahead of Muslim Eid al-Kabir festival, which is barely 2 weeks away. Now, the marketers say they're forced to bring down prices even amidst rising inflation and lingering poverty, which they say is directly responsible for the low patronage. News Central's Adeshawa Odushoga reports.
This is one of the oldest ram market in Lagos. It has existed for more than 40 years.
Behind me is the popular ram market in the Agege Mangoro area of Lagos State, and this place is known to be one of the major suppliers of ram for Lagos residents. But what we see now is that the place is unusually empty and customers are typically nowhere in sight. The sellers are saying that business is not moving as usual and they are blaming the current economic realities for this.
The Eid al-Kabir festival is barely 2 weeks away, and sellers here say prices are relatively lower than expectations, despite the current inflation ravaging the country.
The fuel, diesel is very expensive. After that, the currencies where they are taken by from Niger is too high. So that is what brings the problem of the costly rams. Because we are controlling our rams, because we are not allowed them to be put price anyhow where they are like it.
When asked, Alhaji Danladi, the market head, explained how the cost of transportation and insecurity often influence the price of the livestock, noting that they remain hopeful to sell all of their livestock before the festival.
Cow now, those big ones, if you put a 27 inside the trailer, so the trailer can charge you like 1.2 or 2.2 or 2.5 so, to bring it here.
The Eid al-Kabir festival, also known as Salah in Nigerian parlance, is a major festival recognized in Islam and celebrated the day after Muslim pilgrims to Mecca across the globe perform the most important Hajj rite, and that is staying on Mount Arafat. In Nigeria, this festival is celebrated with the declaration of holidays, slaughtering of livestock, sharing of foods with the less privileged, as well as merriment with families and friends. In Lagos, for News Central, Adeshawa Dushoga.
Now let's head to East Africa, where the African Union has condemned the massacre in a Sudanese village where at least 150 civilians, including around 35 children, were killed. African Union Commission Chief, that's Musa Faki Mahamat, called on the warring sides to end the fighting unconditionally and to facilitate unhindered humanitarian access to the needy population. And the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres also condemned the paramilitary attack, saying it was high time for all parties to silence their guns and commit to a path towards sustainable peace. Pro-democracy activists say more than 100 people died when RSF forces attacked the central village of Wad al-Nura with heavy artillery on Wednesday. Sudan has been ravaged by war since April 2023, when fighting broke out between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces. And that's it on Breakfast Headlines. Now it's back to Mazino and Judith.
Well, thank you very much, Dashin.
Thank you.
And of course, as usual, you're looking dashing.
Oh, so cheesy.
You look good as well.
Oh, Dashin, many thanks. We're going to a short break. When we come back on the other side, we get into our next big story. And this time, we're looking at the Nigerian banking industry and the liquidation of Heritage Bank. Stay with us.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back again, and it's time for The Strips, where we gather the best editorial cartoons from through the week as we appreciate the art forms that bridge the gap between news and art. What can I say? Today we've got very exciting ones, and I'd like to start with the Guardian newspaper. Now, for this specific strip here, it's not really a strip. In fact, we had to crop it from off the front page for a Friday edition of the Guardian. But it's very interesting that the Guardian has left its statistics. You know, they always like those charts, bringing you those charts all the time, and doing this one instead. Now, Judith, I want to show or draw your attention to this very interesting, what's it called now, cartoon or editorial cartoon from the Guardian newspaper. It's depicting the situation currently with people actually besieging Abuja with all the destitutes that we are having there, all the papers are carrying currently, and everything that is happening inside of the capital of Nigeria. It's a very dire situation. It's not just inside of the capital, but across Nigeria. We're beginning to see this picture every single place that we go. Judith, I don't know how, perhaps maybe you have been attending to the woes that Nigeria has been bringing us so far, but do you think that you would be amongst these people, these cartoons?
You kill me every time, as you know. I don't know why you keep doing this, but you kill me every time. Do I look like I can do that? Do I look like I have this in my future, Mazino?
Well, no, not so. But the truth is, whether we like it or not, we're all tightening our stomachs one way or the other.
Yeah, but look, when you ask other people, they would say that they got on the truck and they left Lagos and went to Abuja because it was their turn. Emiloko.
Oh, I see what you did there. Let's move on now real quick from the Guardian newspaper into our very next paper. And now this one is a real strip for this week that came our way this week. And of course, we're looking at Business Day. I love Business Day. They have to be perhaps maybe the one newspaper that always has a strip inside of the papers every single day. Now, this is, hang on a second, where did it go? I lost my paper here. Hopefully, we're going to bring that one back. There it is. My friend, deal with it. Deal with that thing. That's a senator right there. He's holding a very, brandishing a proper weapon when it comes to any adversity that you might face, and he's done with his own adversity, which is hardship. And the common man, the citizen X, minimum wage is his own apparatus here, and this is the amount of hardship that he has to contend with. Very unfair, very imbalanced. You were telling me this morning about the senator who was saying that he couldn't pay his 4 drivers. Was it 4 drivers, Judith?
Yeah, it was 4 drivers. It's
4 drivers.
George Akume.
George Akume couldn't pay his 4 drivers 100,000 naira. That's 400,000
Says
naira.
Nigerians should have mercy on him. He can't pay it. If they increase his salary, if they increase minimum wage to 100K, he won't be able to pay.
I'm not exactly sure why he said that, whether he thought that that was something funny to say at this point.
No, it was garnering sympathy.
Sympathy.
Yeah,
he's garnering sympathy.
Well.
Wow. Well, we're sympathizing with him now, aren't we?
First of all, why does he need 4 drivers?
4 drivers. I wonder if he gets driven in 4 different cars at the same time. But then again, maybe it's a convoy. It might be a convoy. It might be a convoy. Maybe 2 outriders up front. That's 6 riders. 2 riders and 4 drivers. Let's move on now to our next editorial cartoon for this weekend, coming from last week. And it's always the case of everything that Nigeria is going through, whether we like it or not. Kaduna, 423 billion naira probe. Then there's the Kogi instance there, 80.2 billion naira probe. And the EFCC office, please, one at a time. We're handling a bit too much. Is it me, or does it seem like justice is being fast-forwarded here? Is fast-forward the word, or is it like there seems to be a bit too much that the EFCC is going through currently, or whatever investigations they're going through? It's just piling up. There is the slight possibility that we might miss out on 1 or 2 details inside each of these things that are happening currently in Nigeria. It's a lot. Do you agree with me, Judith?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like look, that's their job, isn't it, Mazzino? And to be fair, Nigeria, one of our Achilles' heel is none other than corruption, and that's what they set out to do. And we have office bureaus scattered in the entire 36 states, plus the FCT. So what are they doing? They better get to work. I beg you.
They've got quite a lot on their hands.
Yeah, they really do. To be
whether
fair,
we like it or not. But let's move on. Now, by the way, this is from the Daily Trust. I want to say a shout out to Mustafa. I always love his artwork all the time. Moving on now, and this is coming from, I don't know where this is from. Which one is this one? If I can get a little bit of a help, I think this must be Business Day again. Oh, this is the Guardian once again. So this present hunger is a warm-up for June and August. Of course, we got that information from during the week that families and Nigerians should brace up. We also took it this morning from one of the headlines regarding food insecurity in Nigeria, because what you've been witnessing, they say, is only just the beginning. Come June to August, or is it June to August? Yes, June to up until August is going to be worse. I don't know how bad it's going to get. If what we're experiencing currently is unbearable, then how bad will it get? It's a bit, it's a bit of pill to swallow, but this is perhaps what we might be facing in the coming weeks or coming months to come. How are you bracing up, Nigeria? How are you bracing up, Judith?
Frankly, Mazzino, I don't know. Most days it feels like I'm drowning. Sometimes it feels like I'm hanging by a thread. I'm being as honest and brutally honest as can be. So it's hard, though. It's hard. I don't know. But keep it moving.
Don't cry. It's you and everybody else.
It is.
This is the one time to say, hey, we're all in this together. Except if you're in political office or a senator or something. Yeah. The rest of us, we're all in this together. We'll move on now to our next strip for this morning. And now this is from, once again, the Business Day. Yes, my best one for this morning. I forgot to say, this is the one I'm giving the MVP. Very interesting one here put together by Opara. Go in there and teach them some love. This is the Aba instance. Remember from last week, we had the instance where in Aba, I think about 5 soldiers were killed. The government has put out a bounty for the killers of the soldiers. But then again, we don't want exactly what happened inside of Okoma to happen again. And that's what everybody has been scared might happen. But this cartoon puts it rather aptly. The president asking the soldiers, just go in there, do your job, but treat them with love. When it comes to soldiers, I think it's a case of reorientation. First off, I'm of the opinion that soldiers should not be inside of a civilian population, even when there are matters of conflict. It's the responsibility of the police, but they're not there, so you have to send in the soldiers, especially when things get dire. But how will the soldier attend to any issue? It would mostly be with force, and that's the instance that we got when it happened in Okwama. We're hoping that this doesn't happen in Aba. And so far, it's been almost an entire week. We haven't had any instance of any ill happening. So thank goodness for that one.
Honestly, Mazino, all I can just say is this. If you look at that picture, he says, go in there and show them some love.
Show them love.
But the love is, the question is, where is the love? Because the soldiers are armed.
Yeah, I know. And you see, that's what I said about soldiers, putting them inside of civilian instances. Once you bring a gun to a knife fight, yeah, it's
very wonderfully depicted there. I just love how the person's able to capture it. And he puts 2 fingers in the air. 2 fingers in the air, in the air, in the air.
All right, moving on to our final strip for this morning. Now, this one is, let's see now, once again from the Guardian newspaper. Honorable, 60,000 naira is chicken feed. I hear it's not even up to what you spend on chicken pepper soup every single weekend. Let's do a calculation here. Exactly how much is chicken pepper soup currently?
Wrong. No, don't do it.
Well, no, let's be fair. If you went out on a Friday night, Judith, how much would you spend? If you had the means.
Thank you, because we clearly don't have means.
Let's just, speculate here.
But if you were to go out and then spend, it would be between the range of 12 to about 15,000 naira.
Okay, so you are the average person.
Yeah.
Now, if you were of good means, like perhaps maybe one of these senators or political office holders, I think that would definitely be chicken change. So you can imagine the disparity when it comes to how much you can flex with, and I use that in quote, local parlance here or urban parlance, how much you can flex with and how much you are expecting people, individual citizens, to actually earn. 60,000 naira, yet the governor's saying that this is a bit too much for us. These governors, how much are they earning? We heard about the CJN. I mean, that is still being debated by people across public, social public stance here. Strata here, thank you very much. But then, how much is 65 million naira compared to 60,000 naira that yet is not affordable by the government? I don't know. It's a sad situation.
Sad situation indeed. Mazino, thank you so much for just giving us the strips this morning. I totally enjoy every single one of them. I can't even tell which is my favorite. But hey, if you love editorial cartoons as Mazino does and as we do right here, do remember to indicate some that you might find interesting by reaching out to us through the course of the week on social media. We're at News Central TV on all major platforms. And remember to stay tuned. We have more big stories coming up your way. But first, let's take a break. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Now on to our next big story here, a very interesting one from through the week. On the 3rd of June, the Central Bank of Nigeria revoked the banking license of Heritage Bank PLC, raising curious questions about how depositors and shareholders would fare in terms of getting back their funds. The CBN had explained that its decision on the license revocation was made due to the bank's inability to improve its financial performance. The regulator said Heritage Bank, which was nationally licensed, has not improved and has no reasonable prospects of recovery, thereby making revoking the license the next necessary step. According to the CBN, the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC, has been appointed as the liquidator of the bank. The NDIC said it would pay a maximum of 5 million issued deposits to each customer of Heritage Bank. However, it said depositors with funds more than the issued deposits will be paid as and when the asset of the closed bank are realized.
Now, this is not the first time the bank has run into issues with regulators. Heritage Bank was founded in the 1970s as a Société Générale. Now, the CBN in 2006 closed down the institution due to failure to meet new capital requirements of 25 billion naira, after which the bank successfully challenged the closure in court. Now, the CBN reissued the license as a regional bank in December of 2012. Having acquired the banking license, the new ownership rebranded the bank as Heritage Banking Company Limited and opened for business on March 4th, 2013. In October 2014, Heritage Banking Company met the requirements of Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, AMCON, and the CBN for 100% shares in Enterprise Bank Limited. Now, in January of 2015, AMCON officially transferred ownership of Enterprise Bank to Heritage Bank. Now, with the bank now immersed in another regulatory woes, we look at the implications of the license revocation on this depositors, funds and stakeholders, and more. And so joining us to discuss this is Gospel Obule. He's a chief economist for Streetnomics. We're also joined by Adeshina Olumide. He's also a financial analyst, and he is the head of quantum economics. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you for doing this with us this morning. So let's get started, guys. What are the primary reasons that led to the revocation of, Heritage Bank's license being revoked by the Central Bank of Nigeria?
Mr. Gospel, please, you can go ahead.
Yeah, all right. Good morning. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, really great to be here today. Yes, so I mean, for every economy that must grow, develop, and scale in its potential towards prosperity, the financial sector and monetary dynamics of that local economy has to really be, safe to say, at A game level, if not A plus. And many times it borders heavily around how the players within that sector are evolving, how they are growing stronger, how they are sustainable in terms of the business functions, the level of capital, liquidity base and all that, also the quality of leadership and all. And if you look at across all these metrics, Heritage Bank is one of those banks that pose as a strategic risk to the overall growth and development of the sector. And in many times in my several outlook and advisory engagements, I listed a couple of banks who also interestingly fall into the same category of Heritage Bank. So I'm not surprised to see that they've been flagged off, and the revoking of the license is a top conversation on the news now, and many other dynamics are evolving. So yeah, it's just what it is. And across those counts, the banks haven't done well, really. If you think about it very well, how many Nigerians do you know have an account with Heritage Bank, and how many really innovative engagements have the bank done in terms of playing its role or playing its part within financial sector development? So strategically, in the strategic sense, I don't think that the bank has positioned itself enough as a sustainable institution. As such, I think that the central bank holds some sense in seeking towards liquidating and managing the downsides of these risks.
All right, then, Gospel, thank you very much. Olumide, let me come to you. Now, the NDIC has stated that it will pay a maximum of 5 million naira issued deposit for each customer. Now, beyond that, how secure exactly are depositors' funds beyond that issued amount?
I think just like the last speaker highlighted, look at the drawing strategy of the present CBN team. They intentionally are allowing banks that cannot meet their obligations to fail. And rather than using taxpayers' funds, they are using the systemic template seen in the US Fed. And that's pretty much sell assets to cover liabilities. But prior to Heritage license being revocated, you saw that the CBN came with different strategies. For depositors' funds, I think it's pretty much safe. Out of about 2.3 million depositors account, just 4,000 have above 5 million. And pretty much the NDIC upgraded the insurance coverage to 5 million. So we have 99% of those depositors with less than 5 million. So it's as good as saying that we have less to worry about. But that doesn't mean that those 4,000 are not systemic, because when you look at the numbers, you see that powerful companies have accounts there, and also the federal government agencies has exposure. So I think what they are looking on is that they don't want banks that have toxic assets to be contagious. And Kados buttressed the point that he is going to go aggressive on regulating the banking industry much more than we saw in the last under the Emefiele's era. And you could see the recapitalization exercise where a lot of banks now are trying to buffer their balance sheet and liquidity. It's really a tough era in the banking industry now, with rates really at elevated levels, and knowing fully well that CRR is about 45% cash reserve ratio. So banks don't really have so much to play around with. And you know, the complexity around cyber security, we've heard cases about theft and identity loss in the financial space. So the Apex Bank pretty much is planning ahead, but like the whole thing, it's little to worry about. This is a bank that posted.
Olumide, I wanted to further on something that you said. Now, the NDIC says that they're going to pay these funds when the assets have been realized from, liquidating the bank. However, will they be obligated to pay in interest whatever these depositors have inside of the bank at the moment? Are they obligated to do so?
It depends on the. I'm not an NDIC official, but I can tell you for free that looking at the books and looking at it's going to be easily covered, because when the NDIC, Heritage Bank assets, if you look at from the holistic view, it really can cover, because the total amount of depositors funds were about 650 billion, and loan portfolio was about 700 billion plus. And when you look at non-performing loans, we're around 580 billion. Looking at the strategy, what they're doing now is trying to sort retail depositors as soon as possible, so that to cause less contagion in the industry and unlikely bank run, But I'm not a party to say how that will be done, but I can tell you for free that the NDIC is on top of the matter right now.
Gospel, there were stats there that Olumide just pointed out. Number one, the depositors, the monies that we know was in their spreadsheet for Heritage Bank was about 600 billion naira. And the loan portfolio is over 700 billion naira. And so it begs to ask the question about the overall health of the bank and how this was able to slip through the radar for this long before revocation of the license of Heritage Bank. I'd like you to speak to that, especially on, what does the revocation of, of the bank, of their license indicate about the overall health of our banking industry or our banking sector in general?
I particularly do not think that the current banking system in Nigeria right now is healthy. And what we've seen with the Heritage Bank situation is just a case of, weakening regulatory practices over the years, and probably now an attempt to sort of build momentum to reform from a regulatory standpoint. And that's what we're seeing now. And in many cases also tells us the fact that many banks, just like Heritage Bank, may not be as healthy as it seems, and again and again you've seen that there are many components that sort of make up these numbers, and those sometimes evidence can also be built up in context. So and that's to tell you that more scrutiny needs to go into what banks are doing. More scrutiny needs to go into who is doing what within banks, who is investing what, where are they investing in, what assets are they investing in, what sectors are they investing in, are they increasingly doing work that is driving sustainable business, that is building the reputation of not just the bank, but the financial services sector, or expanding, the base of the financial services sector, doing business for social good, as the case may be. So if you look at it again across these metrics, you've seen that Heritage Bank has really not done much in that area. And even in areas where they seem to have done much, it could have been potential series of activities or evidences that are being made up just to ensure that these institutions look good. So many institutions in Nigeria are very, very, very almost at the verge of bankruptcy. And that's to tell you that in the context of growing financial services in Nigeria, more work needs to be put in terms of regulatory dynamics, internal controls, identifying and mitigating risk early, and also trying to gauge what the brand value of many of these institutions are, and in the minds of the average Nigerian now, they may not want to, invest or deposit money with Heritage Bank even before it's license withdrawal, as the case may be. And that's because the bank has also not presented itself as a reputable institution, worth investing in by people. So there are lots of conversations that have built up to this level. And what we see now, in all fairness, is still probably a surface level of weakness on a healthy state of affairs within the financial services sector.
Gospel, let me jump on that. On Thursday when we spoke, you actually noted the same thing you just said here about the health of banks inside of Nigeria. And with your research that you carried out, you noticed that there are many popular banks that are even still facing these situations and might be going under soon. However, in light of what's happening with Heritage Bank right now, are there any anticipation regarding changes or tightening of the banking regulations by the CBN? Are we going to be seeing that happening anytime soon to help us, build our confidence in the banking system in the nearest future?
Well, we expect that there would be better regulations, and that's because the current central bank governor seems and is interested in managing the downside of all of the years of poor regulation in the financial sector, and he seems a bit more committed to this regard. And but the question again becomes the fact that you have a complete ecosystem of what we term as extractive institutions, and when you have extractive institutions at play, it means that policies, structures, and systems may be designed to favor a couple of individuals. And over time, well, it happens in many other countries as well, even in the West, few individuals of institutions may have grown stronger than the regulators themselves. So how do you regulate a system that is uneven in its structure, in its design and delivery of services? So that's one of the challenges that I believe that the current central bank administration will have to deal with. And how do you ensure that regulation, in a sense, is forward thinking and smart, leveraging best use of technology at the cutting edge of knowledge, or best use of tactics to keep regulations, at the fore of growth and development in the sector? How do you ensure that regulation fosters innovation and doesn't, sort of confines it? So these are the very different dynamics of capabilities that the institutions may need to build, not just the central bank, and many other institutions, NDIC, AMCON, and a couple of them like that are under that block need to build. And in all fairness, we haven't seen much of that. So it has to be a collective responsibility to ensure that in a sustainable sense, the central bank is being able to drive reforms in the financial services sector. And also, how do you ensure that increasingly we can have more healthier banks? There are many banks in Nigeria that we don't really know what they're doing, and we're not even sure. If you walk around the street and you ask up to 5 people, do you bank with A, B, and C? You're likely going to hear a no than a yes. And you also case where increasingly consumers are tilting more to more financial services technology platforms than traditional banks and all that. But then again, you have the issue of data security, protection, safety faced with the former than the later. You also have a case where the fintechs are more technology driven than financial services driven.
Absolutely.
In terms of
that's absolutely true.
Now, Gospel, you just pointed out very, very poignant there, very pertinent issues there when it comes to the fintechs and the DP, which are the deposit banks, right, that we have. Two disparating, one is ahead and then the other is still way back in the infrastructure, which takes me to you, Olumide. How then can there be synergy, right? Can the traditional banks learn from the fintech? Can there be some sort of synergy between the two? I mean, you just pointed out collaborative effort with all, regulators, and this time the Apex Bank. But is there a way that it can be in sync? Because, I mean, looking at the stats, how did Heritage Bank slip through the radar this whole time?
I think what's happening at Heritage Bank is a bit exaggerated, and I share a very diverse view with the last speaker, because I've covered African banks for more than 2 decades, and I can tell you authoritatively that Nigerian banks are quite strong. If you look at Q1 results, for example, GT made a pre-tax profit of 509 billion, the highest in its history. Look at Zenith Bank, 320, First Bank, 239, Access, 203, look at UPA, 156 billion naira. Now, most of those gains came from 3 strategies. We had a very solid Treasury Department team. They diversify. In the case of assets, 1/3 of its income came from foreign subsidiary. So many of these banks have positioned themselves to be immune to the reality of the Nigerian economy. Like I mentioned earlier, Heritage Bank is one of the 25 banks in the country that pose less systemic risk in terms of volume of customers. Access has 58 million customers. Heritage has 2.8. If you look at the United States, for example, we have about 49 banks in stress as we speak. This is the working powerful. So it's healthy for you to have a space where some players are kind of illiquid. But I think to be unfair to say Nigerian banks are quite unhealthy because as we speak right now, what the Apex Bank is trying to do is consolidate their strength and position them for the next frontier. Because if you look at most of these banks right now, their non-performing loan averagely is up less than 5%. Capital adequacy ratio is still held.
We seem to have lost Olumide there. We seem to have lost connection with Olumide there. But the conversation has been on Heritage Bank and, a larger extent, the financial institution in Nigeria when it comes to banking sectors, the traditional deposit banks, as well as fintech, which is now, and also the regulators as well, CBN. This has been a very robust conversation when it comes to, talking about the issues and how best to, sync things together when it comes to accountability, transparency, and also putting into account and rest assured the customers as well. I want to say thank you to Gospel Obule, who joined us earlier as well. Gospel, many thanks for doing this with us. And also Olumide Adesina as well, who joined us live from Paris, France, we seem to have lost connection with. Thank you, gentlemen. You've added much light to these issues and adding your expert opinion to the scenario as we anticipate what the outcome will be in the coming days.
Thank you very much. Now, we ask you, our viewers, to stay tuned because we have yet another riveting conversation up ahead as we look into matters brewing in Kaduna State and its former governor, Nasir El-Rufai. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and let's move on now to Kaduna State. The ad hoc committee set up by the Kaduna State House of Assembly to investigate all finances, loans and contracts awarded by the administration of ex-governor Nasir El-Rufai has recommended that the former governor should be investigated for alleged diversion of funds and money laundering. Presenting its report on Wednesday at plenary, the chairman of the committee, Honorable Henry Zakaria, said most of the loans obtained under the El-Rufai administration did not follow due process and were not used for the purpose for which they were obtained. The committee alleged that a total of 423 billion naira was siphoned by the El-Rufai administration while leaving the state with huge liabilities. The committee accused El-Rufai of breaching his oath of office and failing to exercise due discretion in the administration of the state, thereby plunging Kaduna into unwanted, unjustified and fraudulent domestic and foreign debts.
And a swift reaction to the committee's report, El-Rufai dismissed the allegation as scandalous, saying he served the state with integrity. Human rights lawyer Mike Okehozo over the week called for a fair hearing for the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, whose administration is currently under investigation by the state's House of Assembly. Now, despite El-Rufai's being indicted on corruption charges and money laundering, the lawyer said the embattled former governor, and that's Kaduna State's governor, cannot be indicted by proxy. He added that while the ad hoc committee had done its job, El-Rufai has the right to defend himself against the charges. And so to discuss these matters with us, we have the privilege of speaking to us, we have with us in the House here, or rather he joins us via video chat. We have Honorable Henry Danjuma, is a member, Kaduna House of Assembly.
Good morning, sir, and welcome. Thank you for joining us, sir. All right, sir. Now, if you can hear us, sir, please can you provide us with the details on the specific charges of corruption and money laundering that have been brought against Nasir El-Rufai and what evidence, especially evidence, there's been presented so far?
Well, there are a lot of such allegations leveled against the former governor. So much has been said about the fact that he has not been invited. I hope you know that as the chief executive, he is responsible and he ran a government through the appointed officials that aided him. And we made it very clear that he had those that he appointed were his agents. He delegated powers to them. And that is why when they appeared before us, we also took their evidence as his own evidence or testimony, because they made it very clear that all they did were instructions that were carried out by his directives. And since, of course, yes, he is bound by their actions because they are his agents. He appointed them. And there is no action that is taken by them that is not approved by him. So, of course, there are instances that when facts become so notorious and obvious, they speak for themselves. So the issue of whether he appeared or he does not appear is not valuable in this case. As far as I'm concerned, he who goes to equity must go with clean hands. So there's...
Mr. Henry, are you still there?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, good. Now, Mr. Henry, we would like to let you know that in the course of this conversation, we might have to take a break for the news, but we will return to continue the conversation. But we've still got questions for you.
Absolutely. You just pointed out some of these allegations, but what steps is the House of Assembly taking to ensure that El-Rufai receives a fair and transparent investigation? The House has made its recommendation. There's also a right of reply. El-Rufai said that he served the state in integrity. How is the House going to ensure it's a fair investigation?
That is why we referred our recommendations to the appropriate agencies for further investigation and probe. The state, he served the state selflessly. It's like we said, there are facts that are so obvious that they don't need proof. If he had done the needful, nobody would have come forward to accuse him of doing wrong. It's obvious that the entire government was run with lack of integrity and executive recklessness. That is why we felt we have to do service to the people of Kaduna State by probing the government and ensuring that whatever is due to the state or whatever the state has been shortchanged should be returned to the people.
All right, so human rights lawyer Michael Zehome actually mentioned that El-Rufai could not be indicted by proxy. You also mentioned the fact that you are also waiting to see El-Rufai. However, could you explain the significance of him being absent and the statement here by the human rights lawyer regarding the investigation process? How relevant is that? Is it that he be present, that his appearance is seen?
You know, we made it very clear. Those that we invited, we never invite anybody that was not appointed by El-Rufai. They were his agents. They were his cronies. All their actions were approved by him. They were directed by him. So whether El-Rufai appeared or he did not appear does not really matter, because those actions were actions that were approved by him, were actions that were directed by him, and they did it on his behalf.
So to be clear, sir, you're saying that he does not need to appear before any court, that whatever his...
You are bound, you are liable. So in this case, they came forward, they brought documents, they brought records to show that their actions were taken as a result of his directives and as a result of his instructions. So what else? So as far as we are concerned, the evidence put together is a totality of evidence that El-Rufai would have given himself. He wouldn't have.
Well, all right, sir. Thank you very much. We're going to come back to this conversation, sir, if you do not mind. Do forgive us, but we must go on for the news. But when we get back, we'll continue this as we take a look at the Kaduna instance and El-Rufai. But do stay with us. Now, let's bring you Dashin, who's going to be bringing us the news in just a minute after this break.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines. I'm Darshan Usman. And let's begin by telling you that the state governors in Nigeria have rejected the 60,000 naira minimum wage as earlier proposed by the federal government. Organized labor had turned down the proposal as being insufficient. Now, in a statement issued on Friday by the Director of Media and Public Affairs for the Nigerian Governors Forum, Halima Ahmed, the governors said the proposed minimum wage is too high and not sustainable. The governors expressed concern that if 60,000 naira is adopted as the minimum wage, many states will spend their entire federal allocations on salaries, leaving no resources for development projects. The NGF urged all parties involved in the negotiation process, particularly the labor unions, to consider all socioeconomic factors and reach a sustainable agreement. To security matters now, where Nigerian armed forces have rescued 4,641 hostages and neutralized 9,303 terrorists in 1 year. During the same period, troops also arrested 6,988 terrorists, including their logistics suppliers and informants. Director, Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, made the disclosure during a one-year scorecard joint press conference by the Strategic Communications Interagency Advisory Policy Committee. He also noted that 9,562 Boko Haram ISWAP combatant fighters and their families surrendered to security forces. Meanwhile, Director of Public Relations and Strategic Communications, DSS, Peter Afunanya, has called for collective efforts to ensuring security and safety of Nigerians.
These collaborations have ensured that our security operations are comprehensive, they are strategic, and they are effective. It is worthy of note to state that not all our results can be reported at this time. This is as a result of the sensitive nature of some of the informations which are linked to ongoing operations as well as future operations. Nevertheless, we will share as much as we can from the security and the defense sector. This, we believe, will go a long way to counter misinformation, disinformation, and fake news. We also hope to galvanize support of citizens for ongoing operations across the country, as well as involve the citizens in our dealing with the security challenges across the country.
The loss of life of any Nigerian, whether military or DSS or any person for that matter, should be of concern to all of us. Even when we hear about death of any human being, it's a loss to humanity and it touches all of us. And so if any Nigerian is affected anywhere, we are as concerned as we are if a military officer is also affected.
Now, the Nigerian Correctional Service has revealed plans to unveil the pictures of escaped inmates in the recent Suleja jailbreak in the upcoming weeks. No fewer than 120 inmates escaped in April this year from the Medium Security Custodial Center in Suleja, Niger State, following a torrential rainfall that damaged the walls of the prison facility. The public relations officer of the service made this known in Abuja while answering questions from newsmen at a joint press briefing of security, defense, and response agencies in Abuja.
Jailbreak that gave way for about 120 inmates that escaped from our custodial centers. I want to say here that there is a very huge effort from the service to recapture the fleeing inmates. And I want to say it here that we have been able to recapture so far on 23, which are back to our facilities now. And about the biometrics, this week I want to make it very clear, or I want to say it very clear here, that by the grace of God this week, we'll have their pictures and their details out, because we are working with other security agencies that have been able to, get their pictures and other details of them. So this week, our ICT unit are also working in collaboration with NEPSI and Immigration Office, and there is huge effort in the recovery of such information that is needed for us to put at the public space. You will get it.
Well, that's it on breakfast headlines. Now it's back to Judith and Mazino.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dash, and we appreciate you for bringing in the news, and we'll see you at 12 noon.
Thank you, Judith.
And now we switch gears back to our conversation from earlier, and this time it's about the investigation or the probe by the Kaduna State House of Assembly, saying that the former ex-governor had taken out funds that have left the state in debt, and also calling on all the rights organization, and that is EFCC and other parastatals to investigate the former governor, and that is Nasir El-Rufai. And we're having the conversation before the news, and we're joined on back by Honorable Henry Danjuma, who's been on standby. Honorable, thank you so much for being so patient and sticking with us all through. We appreciate you. And so we continue the conversation this time, and we'll look at the potential legal implications for El-Rufai. Now, if he's found guilty of the charges or the allegations against him, how might this impact his political career or any future aspirations so far?
Well, he is presumed innocent. Anybody that is accused of any of is presumed innocent, and one cannot begin to meddle with issues that you are not sure. So let the probe continue, and let's see how it goes. And if he's convicted, the courts will always make the right statements or judgment or decision.
Okay, so in your opinion, how does the investigation fit into the broader efforts to combat corruption in Nigeria, like we've been seeing recently in other instances as well? What message do you think it's sending to other public officials, whether nascent, whether present, or whether upcoming, regarding their actions in office?
You know, the truth is that we are beginning to be shocked into reality in this country. Warnings have been made a long time ago, severally, that if we continue on this note on running government on corrupt, basis, our country is going to plunge. And you can see in reality what is happening to the country. So we must begin to address these issues seriously, or else I think at the end of the day, we are going to plunge into the abyss. And unfortunately, let me be honest that what we found ourselves in now, the economic stalemate and the insecurity and everything, this is owed to all the corrupt activities of past governments. So the issue of corruption must be taken very seriously.
So there's still one question that's left unanswered, and that is why it had to take an investigation that's coming in this far into the future, past his own administration. Why did it take so long before the investigation was, or call for an investigation was brought on the table? And perhaps also let's look at the people that were in office at the time as well. How many of them are being implicated, and would names be mentioned at this rate?
Well, you wouldn't say that it has taken long. This administration just came into being just about a year ago. you don't just plunge yourself into investigation. You must gather facts. You must be sure of what you have at hand before you start investigating. You must make some preliminaries and ensure that there's substance in what you are going to investigate. So it took us time to go through those preliminaries. And at the end of the day, we saw that there's going to be a prima facie case. That is why we plunged into the investigation. And I can assure you that the fact speaks for itself. And very soon, those facts will be proved. And as per the number of people that are involved, until the investigation is complete, you can't even, you can't infer, you can't say these are the number of people that are served in the past government, in this government, that are going to be probably indicted or so. But for now, you know that 3 serving officials in this government that serve in the other government have been recommended for investigation. And in fact, no, not just 3, indeed, so many of them. I can't even.
We would like names at this point. You mentioned a specific 3. Who are they, and what are their designation within this current government?
Well, we have the executive secretary of the Pension Bureau board, and we also have the executive secretary of the primary State Universal Primary Board, and then the present Commissioner of Finance.
And what positions did they have in the last administration? What designation were they holding?
Can you come again? It's like
I said, what was their past designation in the last administration within El-Rufai's administration? You just mentioned their current roles. What roles do they have in the past administration?
Oh, well, those were the roles they played were like the executive secretary, pension bureau was also the executive secretary of the pension bureau as in the last administration. Likewise, the chairman of the primary education board, and the present commissioner was accountant general at a point, and at a point she was also an acting commissioner of finance, and now she's the.
Now, Honorable, these are these positions that you just mentioned are very crucial when it comes to the governance and just basically the financial state of Kaduna State, which takes me to my next question of how might the outcome of this investigation affect governance and even, political stability in Kaduna State for the people? Because when we think about this in and of itself, governance is for the people.
Sorry, my network has not been too good here. Can you please repeat the question?
I was saying that the positions that you just mentioned, the persons, their roles are very crucial when it comes to the financial stability of Kaduna State, right? And so to this effect, with this investigation, for this call for investigation, with these persons you mentioned, plus the ex-governor, how would it affect governance and political stability in Kaduna State and by extension, the people of Kaduna?
It will aid political stability in the state because people will have confidence in this government. They believe that this government means well for the people. And in government, there can be no vacuum. If they vacate the offices, the appropriate persons will take over the place of assignments, and then government business continues. But as for political stability, I assure you, the people are happy. Of course, yes. Everybody wants justice. Everybody wants leaders they can trust and be sure of. So political stability will even be better in Kaduna State, I can assure you.
So, Mr. Henry, to balance this out, first off, let's get this out the way. The instance in Kaduna State, is it politically motivated in any way, shape, or form? First question before I ask the next one.
Can you please come again?
I asked if the instance happening currently in Kaduna State in any way, if it is political.
It cannot be political in any way because we as an assembly are an established institution by law, recognized by the Constitution, and we, as an arm of government, we have our responsibility, and we have the people's mandate. We are elected on the position of trust, and the people expect the very best from us. We need to, deliver on the dividend of democracy. So, know objectively that we have to perform our functions, and based on the facts that came before us, of course, yes, we have no reason other than to do what we did. So there's no issue of
we seem to be losing our honorable there.
Our connection is not too good, or perhaps maybe it's his connection. But I was going to... Okay, you're back.
We were just performing our role as legislators, and that's just it. Nobody motivated us. It is a duty and a responsibility for us to do what we did.
Now, based on your answer now, how is the House of Assembly ensuring transparency and accountability? We spoke previously about the absence of the ex-governor. Well, how are they ensuring that there's transparency and also accountability in this investigation to uphold democratic principles here and also the confidence of the people?
Well, as you can see, it's a warning to everybody that you will always be called to account for your stewardship. So it's going to put everybody on his guard, both the legislature, the executive, and anybody that is in government or in a position of responsibility or that is holding public office. We are now trying to send a signal that it is not business as usual anymore. And therefore, we in Kaduna State want to ensure that anybody that is entrusted with position of trust or by the citizens of this state must sit tight and do the needful, and must be honest, sincere, and play whatever role, capacity with integrity. Utmost integrity is our watchword.
I mean, watchword is the right word to put it. But you didn't give us, I would like a bit to probe more on the details of your findings in the probe that the House of Assembly, it was mentioned that there were projects that the ex-governor took loans for and it was not done. Can you mention some of these projects and if they are scattered across, the local governments in Kaduna State?
Oh yes, a plethora of projects were purportedly embarked on. And we were so shocked and amazed that we made on the spot visit to some of these purported projects that were, on paper. And to our greatest amazement, we went to some of the sites, nothing, the contractors have not even shown after money has been paid. And those that even attempt to work, the work is either shabby, the quality of the work is so low, and most of the projects were abandoned. So what we are saying is,
what are these projects? Can you give us names of these projects? And are you saying that the contractors? Because if you're saying that the contractors were paid, that's not that's not the problem of the ex-governor, is it? But I would like the details in terms of those projects. What are they? Give us names and contractors as well.
Locations.
Locations. There we go.
Of course, yes. How would you say that it is not the business of the governor? If you want to bring in contractors, there are processes to ensure that you get companies that you can trust public funds into. So the companies must go through the process of due diligence to ensure that those companies are companies that have all that it takes to entrust public funds into their hands. And we went to all the 3 zones. We went to Zaria. We saw roads. There was the Jos Road that crosses or passes through into Zaria, and they started work, they abandoned it. We went to Kafanchan, I mean, we went to Kaduna here. There was one road at close to around Badiko. The contractor has not been shown. And in Kafanchan, in fact, what even happened is some time ago, about a year or so ago, before this government came into play, President Buhari was brought in to commission a road that led from
Well, we're still having issues with the communication here, the connection here with Mr. Henry, unfortunately, but he was mentioning a few of these projects that we're very curious about. Mr. Henry, are you back? If you're back, we lost you there for a minute. Are you back?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, sir. Now, you were mentioning some of these projects that were left abandoned. Thank you very much for mentioning the Jos instance or the Jos Road and the Zaria instance. However, let's talk about the current government. Who is fact-checking them? If we're going to stop these things from recurring in Nigeria's history, we must first look back and perhaps bring people to book like we're trying to do currently, like the House is trying to do currently. But what about the current instance? Who's fact-checking whatever contracts are being signed or whatever monies are being signed out? What apparatus has been put in place to make sure that there is no recurrence of the past again?
We as legislators, we have oversight functions. And we are not just like any other, past legislature. This time, the quality and the creed of members that are in the assembly are people who mean business. So we are doing our oversight functions properly, and we are checking. We check. We have committees in the House. So the committees are very much in place, and they are checking all the ministries and the MDAs. I can assure you, like I said, it is not going to be business as usual. Certainly, it will not be business as usual.
Right. I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Henry Danjuma, Member House, Kaduna House of Assembly, for sharing your opinion here with us and also that of the House. We do appreciate it. Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
And that was honorable. I'm sorry about that, but ladies first always. And that was
cheeky.
Oh goodness! But that was Honorable Henry Danjuma. He's the Deputy Speaker at Kaduna House of Assembly, and he's just given us a bit of insight as to their investigation and probe of the ex-governor, and a lot of allegations were made. Now, we understand that the Nasir El-Rufai camp, they do have a right of reply as well. Heavy allegations were made here as well to a couple of members of this current administration as well as past administrations. And a number of individuals were mentioned, and so they do have a right of reply, and we are more than happy to create that platform to come up here and also give their own response to these allegations. But one thing is certain, this is for the people. Governance is important, and infrastructural development is for the people. And when that is left behind or not done properly or just abandoned completely, questions will be raised and allegations will be made. So we look forward to having a more robust conversation. And this is our own invitation to those members that were mentioned to come out here to come speak with us.
It'll be good to have them, actually.
Absolutely.
It's going to be fire. But we still got more inside of Breakfast Extra for a Saturday edition here. Coming up, Creative Corner. And you'll be pleased to see who we have in it today.
I started the lifestyle niche in 2018. I was like 2 years after. The first year of photography is you just, finding your parts and then trying to, know where you want to stand. So it wasn't like 2018, I knew that, okay, yeah, what I want to do is lifestyle photography. I took pictures of a lot of people, but like the major picture that was like a breakthrough into the lifestyle niche was the pictures I took for Leo da Silva when he first got out of Big Brother. My last trip to Cape Town was more of a business trip, but I just mixed up vacation with it as well. The brand that sorted my trip had already, booked some certain things, but I moved my flights earlier. So I went a week earlier before the gig. One of the major reasons why I did that was I just wanted to, I also wanted to reflect on so many things that I've done so far for myself and for my brand, and then also just explore some parts of Cape Town in a creative way. So, I mixed more with South Africans in the country, like in the city rather, because I was just in Cape Town. I didn't go to another city. So it was a very, very good one. And then I was able to tell my story through camera. You know when you've worked so hard to earn something and then it's just like, okay, yeah, this is your thing. So literally he reached out to me, he texted me himself. Oh no, he told me I was in Cape Town. So he's literally one of the reasons why I even moved my flights closer. So I was in Cape Town and then he texted me and I'm like, wow, this Wizards player, that's so cool. So he texted me and he was like, oh yeah, he would like me to take some photos of him and all that. And I'm like, bro, I'm out of town right now, but I'll be back very, very soon. So I had to book my flights closer. And then when we came, boom, we walked. So I literally asked him, oh yeah, bro, how did you get to know about me and before reaching out? So he told me even before he got to Nigeria, a couple of people where he's from already told him about me. Shout out to Shank. Shank already told me about it days before Kaisinas came. That was really, really big, still very big. It's just very, very cool when you've worked so hard to a certain level. I mean, #1 lifestyle photographer in Africa, who else would they have called? The sneaker community has been a thing even before I started pushing it more than it is right now. A very big shout out to Laemi. I don't know if you know him, do you understand? He's been doing really cool stuff earlier before I started pushing it. He's been doing some stuff via live video where people just join live videos and show their sneakers. He does a thing called 7 days rotation. So everybody just comes out, join the live video and show what they've been wearing for the past 7 days. And also their biggest hits. Hits are let me use the word premium, your most premium pair of sneakers and most expensive and sneakers with a very dope history around it that is rare. Do you understand? So, but it wasn't literally more than that, but literally the sneaker community has already started around that period of time. And I'm sure there are a couple of people that might have been doing it that I don't even know about and we've probably not connected. But when I started it, I decided to take it to the next level with my creativity. I put so many people on it, created so many platforms to make people express themselves through sneakers. And then I literally tend to talk more about it on my social media. I use my social media as a voice for the community. A couple of events and then Sneaker Fest happened. I headlined it and that has been the biggest sneaker event that's happened in Africa. Honestly, it's a very, very beautiful mix. It's just like a producer and an artist living in the same building. It's literally a very good mix. It doesn't go wrong. The producer can wake up one day and be like, bro, I made one very nice beat, and then the artist jumps on it. So the sneakers around, mixing it up with photography, sneakers are very, very beautiful, and they have very, very pleasing aesthetics. Do you understand? So you can just wake up and then my phone, my camera, I do anything, do you understand? When I traveled with some pairs of sneakers to Cape Town, because Cape Town is a very beautiful city, every picture I take is a hit. And then the fact that I love lifestyle personally outside photography, sneakers would always match with my personality all day. I'm coming from really cool stuff and letting them know that I created a very, very solid community where creatives can, come together. Not just a space where people just come and go. You can literally be in that space and learn a lot from people. The sneaker community is literally a space for different communities from different parts of the world to unite and form up. It's not just coming to see what your shoes look like. It's also coming to network with different types of people and, solid things can come out from it. Every day, as humans, whatever it is that you do, you face certain challenges every day when you step out of your homes. But I'm literally this kind of person that I don't let whatever challenges that I go through weigh me down. I just see it as something I cannot control at the moment, and I know that, oh yeah, I'll be out of it. But in terms of this sneaker community, one of the many challenges that I feel I and every other people have has to be the exchange rate. Most of these sneakers are not even as expensive as we buy them over here. Do you understand? But when they bring them into the country, ship them in and do all that and add everything that's included in it, like it just becomes unnecessarily expensive. So I don't know whoever gets to see this video and maybe there's something that can be done about that. Everything is a lifestyle. Everything is part of it, you know. Like I've been training people since 2018, and then I've taught so many people different types of photography in different spaces. Do you understand? And I always say something to people. I always tell them that HL Academy is the future. Yeah, because we keep bringing out new creatives every period of time. Like every time there's a new creative that's coming out, somebody that is as bad and even badder than more people that everybody knows. You understand? Like, and what makes it easy is, you know, you find somebody that is young like you teaching you, and then first and foremost you're comfortable around the person. Like when you see me teaching my students, you literally think we're all guys, because first and foremost we are like, you know, we are like very, very chill together. First we're like gisting, we can literally talk about anything. Do you understand? So when you have somebody like that you see as a friend and the person is literally teaching you stuff, like you can easily, you know, get whatever it is logged in real quick. Consistency, because photography, cinematography, anything that has to do with visuals comes with a lot of patience, because you make so many mistakes. You know, it's just like lightning. If you want to shoot, no matter your gadgets, if you don't get your lights right, your shoots will just not be good. So everything is very, very important. So if you're not consistent with what you're doing, I don't think you can become, you know, a professional with it, because it takes so much practice to be perfect with what you're doing. So consistency is the major thing that I feel like every creative out there needs, because if you cannot be consistent with what you're doing, how do you want to get a hold of it? Do you understand where I'm coming from? And then also, networking is also very, very, very important, because these are crafts. Like, you can be very, very good at what you do, and if people don't know you, you might not get a chance. Daddy and mommy, if you're watching this video, I'm sorry, but I'm not advising anybody to be stubborn, but I was stubborn. I didn't listen to my parents at that point in time. Do you understand? I was, you know, I was getting them really late and they were not having it, but I did what I did. I did what I did. Yeah, like, you know, sometimes, yeah, your parents definitely do want the best for you, but they might not know, but most of the times they might just be being overprotective. Meanwhile, I feel like sometimes they should also see things from your perspective to also know what you want and what you're trying to achieve. So, you know, our parents think when you go to places like, when you go to parties, when you do certain things, when you dress in a certain way, or when you like do certain hairstyles and all that, they feel like you're already like, you know, moving the wrong way. But like, sometimes they don't know that some of us are built different. Not everybody's going to be in the corporate space, and not everybody's going to do things the way people in the corporate world do it. Do you understand? So some of us are just built very, very different. And if you feel like you have that spark in you, please do not let it die. The mistakes that I've made that defined me, I mean, you know, like I said, I honestly do not count my mistakes. I just live like the present, and what's coming is what matters to me the most. You see, if I've made mistakes, immediately that mistake was made. I'm pushing it aside. So I might not even remember the things that I've done that I probably think I didn't do right, because I'm like on to the next real quick. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I don't like to regret things. I've done whatever I've done. HLHQ is coming. Yeah. A space for creatives to unite and be able to express themselves, because there's literally no much platform for creatives in Nigeria, and I honestly want to use my platform to put that together in the best way that I can, because creativity matters a lot, and it feels like a lot of people are sleeping on the creative space. There's media, and creatives are in media, do you understand? But like, I need people to understand that creatives are different from other type of people. So that's why when you were saying something about creatives in the industry, I just made a joke about it because creativity is different from normal. I want people to be able to discover that and know the type of strength that creatives hold. There's no limitations, like any type of creative, like whether you're a designer, you're an artist. And the creatives I'm talking about, I'm not talking about musicians, actors or actresses. I'm talking about the real creatives, the ones that are barely seen. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Like, let's say, for instance, like a 3D designer, an editor, do you understand? A sound guy, just those types of creatives, people that they are the ones that help pay attention to details of perfection that you guys see. Do you understand? Like, let's say, for instance, the video drops a music video. Boom, the music video, everybody gets to talk about the music video, but like the whole production team involves like over 70 people. Those type of people, those creatives, like I want to create a space for them to express themselves more and be creative in their own way, because what you see is just projects that they put them on. I feel like I'm very, very unique, like God's gifts, you can't deny that. And, you know, your personality matters a lot too. Sometimes not everything is about crafts. There are a lot of people that are out there that can even do better than I do in terms of photography. Like, no cap about that. But like, how you present yourself to people. And, you know, they say something that your network is your net worth. Do you understand? You choose your people, like choose your own people. Some people just want to be with everybody. And then people are just like, yo, where do you stand exactly? Do you understand? You can work for everybody and not be with everybody. They are two different things. So I think positioning matters a lot when it comes to a craft like photography, because it has a lot to do with personal lives. So nobody wants to be sharing too much with you while you're sharing with another person that they probably don't sit well with. Here's the thing, you see, when I said I want a voice for creatives, I want people to see it in a very, very deep way, because I went through a lot to give myself the voice that I have right now as a creative, because trust me, nobody really cares about a creative, because creatives do not produce clout, and people only like people that produce clout. Now, I'm not saying that in any bad way, but like, if I don't have anything to offer you, you don't want to be around me. Do you understand where I'm coming from? But like, only creative people know what other creatives can do and what creatives are capable of doing. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Now, let's say, for instance, you're a business owner and then you have a talent and you have so much money to put into the talent. Whatever it is that you're investing in that talent would be more productive if you have a lot of creatives in your team. I want people to understand that without creatives, a lot would not be able to happen. Do you understand where I'm coming from? If you're a star, your stylist is a very, very creative person. There are some people that they're just naturally creative, and I want people to understand that creativity is different from normal. Each person in life are creative in their own way, but there are some people that creativity is their specialty. And I really want to give a voice for creativity and let people understand how much value creativity has.
And now we switch gears to Focus Africa and focus on South Africa. Now, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa and other senior officials of the African National Congress Party were in a critical meeting Thursday to decide if they should formally propose a unity, in quotation marks there, government, bringing in all major parties to solve a political deadlock in South. Now, which is in South Africa, of course. Now, a government of national unity, which ANC officials said is the first option on the table, evokes South Africa's transition from apartheid, white minority rule, to a democracy in 1994. Then new President Nelson Mandela brought political opponents, including the last apartheid leader, into his first government to foster unity in a fractured country.
Now, while that was a remarkable act of reconciliation by Mandela, the ANC's hand has been forced this time after last week's election removed its 30-year majority and ensured it has to work with others to form a government. ANC had held a comfortable majority ever since the end of apartheid, but won just 40% of the votes in this election, although it remained the largest party. Now, joining us to have this conversation is Nsikilela Breakfast, who is joining us from Nelson Mandela Bay in South Africa. You are welcome, Nsikilela.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good. Now, let's talk about this election from last week and the ANC. The ANC is considering forming a unity government that includes all major parties. We last saw this in 1994 as we transitioned into the Nelson Mandela tenure. Now, what are the potential benefits and or challenges of such a coalition?
Well, at the moment, coalition arrangements in South Africa have been unworkable and unstable, largely because the political elite have a tendency to rush into forming these coalition arrangements without developing a conflict management mechanism to deal with their own internal contradictions. But also these coalition arrangements, some people don't see them as a byproduct of democracy, because you must remember, people don't vote for a coalition arrangement. They vote for political parties who then decide, without the knowledge of their voters, who they want to join into a coalition arrangement. For instance, the ANC has three options at the moment. The first option is to join forces with the Democratic Alliance. Some of the ANC members have been protesting outside the venue where the ANC has held its meeting the last time, because they are vehemently opposed to any arrangement with the DA, who is seen to be a right-wing organization, because it is opposed to racially inspired policies which are meant to empower black people. And then you have another possible option, which is the ANC working with the EFF. That one can resonate with the majority of black people, but the challenge is that the market forces might respond negatively because the EFF is seen to be too radical and gravitates too much to the left. The other option is to work with the newly formed Umkhonto weSizwe party, which does not support constitutionalism, the rule of law. They don't support the rights of members of the LGBTQI. So the ANC is stuck between the rock and the hard place. The worst part of it is that South Africa doesn't have a long-standing history of coalition arrangements. You must remember, coalition arrangements rose to prominence for the first time in the early 1900s between the National Party and the Labour Party, and then in 1933, then the National Party rose to prominence and became hegemonic in the political landscape until the ANC came into the picture in 1994. Now, we have had a coalition arrangement in 94, but that arrangement was different because it was a byproduct of democratization, which is the political transition to democracy between the ANC and the National Party. But the ANC in 94 had won the elections, which is different from now, because now there's no outright winner, which makes it very difficult for the ANC to constitute a government.
Right. Now, Nsikilela, now you just pointed out, this conditions for why they would want to do this, given that they didn't win the majority. If there's going to be a coalition, what are the key factors that ANC must consider in deciding between a broad unity government and a narrower coalition with either one or two parties?
My view is that a government of national unity is power sharing, meaning that it's a coalition. So the ANC will have to make sure that gone are those days of one-party dominance, whereby they can constitute the government by themselves. They will have to share ministerial positions. Maybe the other party might demand to be the deputy president and get other strategic positions in the executive institution. So I think those are the things that come to mind. But also, they need to discuss, this is extremely important, they need to discuss a model of development that is relevant for the country, because most of the time, even though these coalition arrangements are based on marriage of inconvenience, but politicians only discuss musical chairs, what's in it for them, as opposed to what's in it for the country.
Right. You just said this, right? But how do you think the South African public will react to the idea of a unity government? So far, is the reaction for or against, and what impact could this have on, the political stability and governance in general for South Africa?
I think currently we have political cleavages. These electoral outcomes have divided South Africans along racial lines. For instance, the majority of black people are vehemently opposed to any possible coalition between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance, because you have a lot of denialism in some sections of the white population. Not all of them are like that, but you have others who have no historical appreciation, who only want contemporary specificities to be responded to, but they don't acknowledge the past. And some black people feel like, but if you want to address issues of the economy, you have to appreciate history, that black people have a history of oppression, that we cannot go forward as a country without leveling the playing field. But also you have other white people who feel like, but why are we stuck in the past? So these electoral outcomes have divided the country. And if the ANC fails to strike a deal with any of the political parties, then the way out, according to the constitutional provisions, is to have a rerun. But that will have major financial implications. As you know, that campaigning for elections, managing an election is a mammoth task.
And Nsikelelo, what exactly did you mean when you talked about the racial divide, especially when you talked about the Democratic Alliance? Why are most black people averse to that coalition?
The DA is constituted by a majority of white people who espouse the philosophical tradition of non-racialism. They say that they are transcending beyond racial categorization, meaning that they are colorblind. They don't see race. Now, the ANC has pursued an agenda of transformation. And at the heart of that is basically racially inspired policies like affirmative action. There is a policy that we call, in other countries in Africa, they call it Africanization. But in our country, we call it Triple BE, which is broad-based black economic empowerment, which is meant to empower black people or to create a black capitalist class by entrenching black people in the commanding heights of the economy. But the DA is opposed to that because they say that it's reverse apartheid or something along those lines. And some of the black people feel like there is no historical appreciation among some members of the DA. You know, they are not sensitive to the past. So that's what I mean by a racial divide. But also race in this country is a central way of examining things in the body politic, because the history of black people is a history of oppression. For instance, poverty has a color. The majority of people who are on the margins of the economy are black people. Therefore, you cannot talk about politics in this country and not talk about race, because poverty, unemployment, inequality, all those social insecurities have a color.
Okay.
Right. Well, Professor Nsikelelo, Breakfast, he's been our political analyst today and just giving us insights on a possible coalition when it comes to a unified government ahead of just after the elections in South Africa. Many thanks to you, Breakfast, for coming on. I appreciate you for doing this with us. Thank you.
Now moving on, Perspectives today, where we explore the diverse viewpoints that define our society. Today we focus on a topic that's been on everyone's mind, the recent decision by the Nigeria Labour Congress, the NLC, and the TUC, the Trade Union Congress, to call off their planned strike. Now, this move has sparked a wide array of reactions from Nigerians across the country, from relief to support to skepticism and even concern. The responses reflect the complex landscape of labor relations and also economic realities in Nigeria. Now, join us as we take a look and hear from various public stakeholders on this.
When they did there, when they say 60,000 naira, so their dogs, when they their house, what did their dogs they chop a week is more than 200,000 naira. Dog food. Then they will come say we when they do the work. Now we be the engine room of this this government.
We don't enjoy that we come out and stand in the sun and we're talking over one thing over and over again.
Can you buy anything with 60,000? No. So if the government wants the workers to come back to work, let them go back and do something reasonable.
Are you aware what the National Assembly goes home with? Are we demanding for so much compared to what they go home with? Why should it be that it's the work?
Whether 60, whether 120, whether 250, whether 30,000 naira.
105.
Oh, there we go. Speculative. One thing is for certain, a decisive number that suits everyone must be done, and hastily too. And with that, that brings us to the very end of today's edition of Breakfast Extra. It's been a thoroughly enjoyable Saturday.
Enjoyable. Enjoyable is the word, and we're hoping that it's been enjoyable for you as well as you sit back at home and enjoy the show. Don't go anywhere because there's plenty to come your way inside of News Central TV for the rest of the day. And of course, tomorrow morning, bright and early at 8 a.m., we'll bring you the Sunday edition for Breakfast Extra. Please join us then. My name is Mazino Appeal.
And I'm Judith at TV. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Good night now.